I mean, you can't write this stuff. You literally cannot write this stuff. If I put this in a script for a B movie, the producers would kick me out of the office. They'd say, Ethan, come on, nobody is this stupid. Nobody walks into a rake this hard on purpose. But here we are, December 16th, 2025. And I want you to really understand the level of incompetence we are watching right now. It's staggering. It is Olympic level incompetence. Look, we've been tracking this Judiciary Committee mess for a while, right? Jim Jordan, the gavel, the yelling, the sleeves rolled up, we know the drill. And the plan, the grand master plan, was supposed to be tomorrow, December 17th. That was the day, the big show. Drag Jack Smith in there, lock the doors, turn off the cameras, and browbeat the guy for 8 hours, leaking the bits they like, burying the bits they don't. Standard operating procedure. It was a layup, a political slam dunk. But then, oh man, then they got greedy. See, here's the thing about trying to play 4D chess when you can barely handle checkers. You forget the rules. You forget that when you subpoena the prosecutor, when you drag him in to answer for his crimes, you make his evidence relevant. And that is exactly where the trap snapped shut. Because while Jordan was busy pre-writing his press releases, the Democrats, Jamie Raskin and his crew, they were sitting there just waiting. And 96 hours ago, boom, they pulled the pin. They turned around and said, okay, you want Jack Smith? You want to grill him on the Mar-a-Lago case? Fine, but you can't question him about a report that you're hiding from the public. And suddenly, everyone is looking at Volume 2.
Remember Volume 2, the secret report, the one Judge Cannon suppressed back in January? The one A.G. Bondi, our newly minted Attorney General, desperately wants to keep buried in the basement? Yeah, that one. The one that actually has the receipts, the obstruction, the willful retention, the stuff that never made it to a jury because they killed the case first. Now, because Jim Jordan insisted on this deposition, because he just had to have his moment, the Democrats have the legal hook to demand that report be released. It's the Streisand effect on steroids. The GOP is terrified. You can smell it. You can see it in the frantic scrambling. They subpoenaed the one guy who can destroy their narrative, and they gave the other side the perfect excuse to unseal the evidence. They're holding a grenade. They pulled the pin, and now they're looking at us like, why is this ticking? It's not just a backfire, it's a total strategic implosion. And honestly, it couldn't happen to a nicer group of people. So buckle up, because tomorrow isn't going to be the grilling Jim Jordan wanted. It's going to be a hostage negotiation, and the hostage is the truth. All right, let's cut the music. Let's turn up the house lights. I want to get granular here, because if you just read the headlines, you miss the actual mechanism of the trap. You miss the beautiful, twisted logic of what is happening. We need to talk about Volume 2. Now, most people think there's just the Jack Smith report, one big book, but that's not true. There are two. Volume 1 covered January 6th, we know about that. But Volume 2, that is the ghost story. That is the one that keeps them up at night. Volume 2 is the specific, detailed, evidentiary roadmap of the Mar-a-Lago documents case. And here is where the timeline, the actual receipts, becomes devastating. Go back to January 2025, 11 months ago. Judge Aileen Cannon, remember her? She issues an order suppressing Volume 2. Why? What was the legal excuse? She said it was to protect the due process rights of the co-defendants, Walt Nauta, Carlos de Oliveira, the guys moving the boxes, right? The argument was, we can't release this report because these guys still have to face a trial. Okay, fine, standard legal procedure. But here is the kicker. Here is the fact that Jim Jordan is praying you forget. Those cases are gone. Earlier this year, under Attorney General Pam Bondi, the DOJ dismissed those charges. Gone. Poof. Nauta walked. De Oliveira walked. So, if there are no defendants and there is no trial, who are we protecting? That is the question Democrats asked in that letter to Bondi on December 12th.
I want to read you the specific language because it is surgical. They didn't just ask nicely. They wrote that the suppression of this volume now has, quote, absolutely no justification. They are calling the bluff. They are saying the legal shield is gone. The only thing left is a political shield. And this brings us to the subpoena itself. Jim Jordan wants to sit Jack Smith down tomorrow, December 17th, and ask him, why did you pursue this case? Why was it so aggressive? Was it political? Do you see the problem yet? To answer that question, to answer it truthfully, Jack Smith has to point to the evidence. He has to say, Representative Jordan, I pursued the case because on page 45 of Volume 2, we found proof that, stop. You can't do that. You cannot have that conversation if Volume 2 is sealed. This is the forensic trap. By subpoenaing Smith to testify about the conduct of the investigation, the GOP has made the basis of the investigation legally relevant to Congress. You cannot question the prosecutor about his homework while hiding the homework. It violates the basic concept of oversight.
And look at the panic from the last 96 hours. The Democrats filed an amicus brief. They are literally in court right now arguing this. Their argument is simple. The executive branch, that's Bondi and Trump, waived their privilege the moment the legislative branch, that's Jordan, demanded testimony. If Smith speaks, the report speaks. And let's be real about what's in there. We aren't talking about unpaid parking tickets. We are talking about the raw evidentiary roadmap. We are talking about witness interviews that contradict the public narrative. We are talking about these specific reasons why career prosecutors thought this was the most clear-cut obstruction case in American history. Jim Jordan thought he was summoning a punching bag. Instead, he summoned a witness who is legally bound to tell the truth about a document that proves Jordan is lying. It is, purely as a piece of legal maneuvering, it is breathtaking. They wanted a show trial. They wanted a soundbite. But by forcing the issue, by demanding Smith show up tomorrow, they have inadvertently created the single strongest legal argument for transparency we have seen in 2 years. They handed the Democrats the crowbar, and now they're watching them pry the crate open. But let's zoom out. We have to zoom out. Because if you think this is just about Jim Jordan having a bad week, if you think this is just a clumsy mistake by a few overeager staffers, you are missing the forest for the trees. This isn't an accident. It is a methodology. We need to talk about the architecture of the cover-up, because what we are seeing, this desperate clawing attempt to suppress a document while simultaneously controlling the narrative, is the exact same playbook we have seen for nearly a decade. It is the defining political strategy of the modern era. I call it the preemptive burial, and to understand it, you don't look at 2025. You have to go back. You have to go back to the spring of 2019.
Do you remember? I know it feels like a lifetime ago, but remember the Mueller report? What happened there? It was the exact same mechanic. Robert Mueller spends 2 years investigating. He produces a report, a damning report, a report that outlined 10 specific instances of obstruction of justice. 10. But did the American people get to see that report on day one? No. Instead, we got a 4-page letter. A summary written by Bill Barr, and that summary said essentially, nothing to see here, total exoneration, no collusion, no obstruction. He released the lie 3 weeks before he released the truth, and by the time the actual report came out, by the time we could read the damning details, it didn't matter. The cement had dried, the narrative was set, the no collusion banner was already flying. They knew that if they could control the first impression, the facts wouldn't matter later. That was the beta test. That was where they learned that reality is negotiable if you are the one holding the Sharpie, and they have run that play every single time since. Look at the Ukraine scandal, the perfect call. Remember that? What did they do with the transcript of that call? Did they file it normally? No, they hid it. They moved it to a code word level server meant for national security secrets, not because the call contained nuclear codes, but because it contained political embarrassment. They weaponized the classification system itself. They used the machinery of the state, the very tools designed to keep us safe, to keep themselves safe from us. And that is what is happening with Volume 2. It's the same pattern. They use due process as a shield for the powerful, while running roughshod over the due process of everyone else. When it's a regular person, lock them up. When it's one of them, oh, we can't release the report. We have to protect the privacy of the co-defendants.
It is cynical, it is corrosive, and it relies on one specific thing: your exhaustion. They are banking on the fact that you won't read the footnotes. They are banking on the fact that you are too busy, too tired, or too burnt out to remember what happened 6 months ago, let alone 6 years ago. They treat the truth like it's a perishable good, like if they can just keep it in the fridge long enough, it will rot and they can throw it out. And look at the asymmetry here. This is what drives me crazy. This is the part that should make you furious. The Democrats, and I love them, but they do this. They play by the rules of a courtroom. They file briefs, they write letters, they cite statutes, they appeal to norms. They act like if they just present the right argument, the system will self-correct. The GOP, they don't play by courtroom rules. They play by information warfare rules. They know that a closed-door deposition is a weapon. Why do they love closed doors? Why did they want Jack Smith in private? Because behind closed doors, there is no truth. There is only the leak. They can walk out of that room and say Jack Smith admitted he cried and begged for forgiveness, and until the transcript comes out 3 weeks later, that is the news. They are trying to do to Jack Smith exactly what they did to Mueller. They want to bury the report, create a false summary, and scream victory before anyone can check the receipts. But this time, the machine jammed because they forgot that you can't run the Bill Barr playbook without Bill Barr. They forgot that you can't hide the document when you've already fired the defendants. They got sloppy. They got so used to the silence, so used to the lack of consequences, that they stopped checking the locks on the doors. This isn't just about a document in a box in Florida. This is about a decade-long project to erase memory, to make sure that history is written not by the victors, but by the liars. They aren't afraid of justice. They're afraid of the record. They are afraid that one day the ink will dry and the world will see exactly who they were. And that is why they fight so hard to keep the lights off. Because they know that cockroaches cannot survive in the sun. Now, I want to stop. I want to stop laughing at their incompetence. I want to stop analyzing the legal chess moves, because if we stay in the weeds of who filed what brief, we risk missing the terrifying reality of what comes next. We need to talk about the future. Not next week, not the 2026 midterms. I'm talking about the structural future of this country. Because if this works, if they somehow wiggle out of this trap, if Jim Jordan manages to hold this deposition, spin the narrative, and keep Volume 2 locked in a vault forever, then we have crossed a line that we cannot uncross. We are staring at the death of public truth. Think about what that means. For 200 years, the basic compact of this republic has been simple. The government acts, and eventually, the people see the receipts. Maybe it takes years. Maybe it takes a FOIA request. Maybe it takes a brave whistleblower. But the assumption, the bedrock assumption, is that the record belongs to us. But look at what they are building here. They are building a system where the truth is no longer a matter of public record. It is a proprietary asset of the ruling party. If they succeed in burying Volume 2, even after the cases are dropped, even after the legal justification is gone, they establish a new precedent. They establish the rule that political embarrassment is a state secret. And once you establish that, the game is over. Imagine a world 5 years from now, a world where this precedent is cemented. A scandal happens. Maybe it's corruption. Maybe it's a war crime. Maybe it's a massive failure of infrastructure that kills thousands. Congress investigates? No. They hold a closed-door show trial. The report is written, yes, but it is immediately sealed to protect the process. The public sees nothing. You see only what they want you to see. You see the press release. You see the doctored summary. You see the lie, and you have no way to prove otherwise. That is not a democracy. That is a management system. That is a population being managed, not governed.
We are looking at the privatization of history. They are trying to turn the Department of Justice into a private law firm for the president and the House Judiciary Committee into a PR agency for the party. And the scariest part isn't the malice, it's the silence. It's the fact that half the country might look at this and shrug. Well, that's just politics. No. Politics is debating tax rates. Politics is arguing about zoning laws, hiding evidence of crimes against the state, hiding the roadmap of how a president compromised national security. That isn't politics. That is erasure. And that is why tomorrow matters. That is why December 17th, 2025 matters. It's not about Jack Smith. Jack Smith is a big boy. He can take care of himself. He's a prosecutor. He's used to being yelled at. It is about the document. It is about the physical proof of what happened. If we lose the ability to agree on a shared set of facts, we lose the ability to self-correct. A democracy that cannot see its own mistakes is a democracy that is walking blindfolded off a cliff. And right now, they are trying to tighten the blindfold. So when you see the news tomorrow, when you see the leaks coming out of that closed room, when you see Jim Jordan screaming about bias and partisanship, do not get distracted by the noise. Ask the one question that matters. Where is the report? If they are so confident in their innocence, show us the file. If it's a witch hunt, show us the spell book. If there is nothing to hide, stop hiding it. Because until they do, we have to assume the worst. We have to assume that what is in Volume 2 is so damning, so undeniable, that they are willing to break the very concept of congressional oversight just so you can't read it. They are afraid of you. Never forget that. They are hiding this from you, and the only way they win, the only way the darkness wins, is if we stop asking for the light. So keep asking, keep pushing, because the truth is still there. It's sitting in a box, waiting for someone to turn the key, and we cannot let them throw away the key.
I just want to take my time this morning to address the events that took place in Providence, Rhode Island at Brown University and some of the aftermath of that. And I just want to make clear that, first of all, this was a crime. This was a murder, 2 murders so far. And it's an ongoing active investigation. We don't know who did it. We don't know what motivated them. And speculation, particularly out on the internet, by people who have no idea what they're talking about, who have no clue about what is happening, is not helpful to the investigation. It gets people agitated and revved up, and it causes a lot of stupidity to cascade into tip lines that then law enforcement officials have to try to work through. There is simply no need from an investigative point of view for people who have no idea what they're talking about to offer their stupid and ill-informed views about what happened all over the internet. So I would please, just from a law enforcement perspective, ask anyone who sees this to just shut up until we know who did it and why. We will find out. Give it some time. This wasn't just a crime, it was also a tragedy. 2 families who were looking forward to their college student son and daughter coming home for the holidays are now having to prepare funerals. They probably had already bought presents for their children. This has to come as perhaps the most savage blow that a parent can face. And for the parents of the students who are still in the hospital and may well be in the hospital for some time through the holidays, all of their holiday plans have changed as well. They're not going to be around the tree with their kids. They're going to be in a hotel, visiting a hospital room in a state far from home. So give those families a bit of grace, too. Ill-informed and unnecessary speculation about what went on does those families no good at all. Particularly not as they're trying to get through this immediate grief with the holidays ahead of them and all of their family expectations for those holidays now dashed into grief. So whether it's to protect the law enforcement investigation from a lot of unnecessary and ill-informed noise cluttering up the ability of the many agencies working on this to do their jobs, or whether it's out of simple courtesy and sympathy to the families that are going through this awful moment, just please shut up with the speculation. Sympathy and concern, reaching out helpfully is always welcome. I'm grateful for the chairman calling attention to this in the way that he did. The ranking member, I should say. But all the rest of this stuff, all the conspiracy theories, all the creepy, weird plot ideas, please, just knock it off. Thank you.
Senator, let me begin with your former prosecutor's role here and what you see in this. And this point, is it possible to commit a war crime if there isn't a war? What do we call it when there isn't a war?
I guess the common word would be murder.
Is that what you see here?
I don't know enough about the circumstances to, make a final legal determination. But for Pete's sake, you've got people whose boat has been blown up. Whatever they were doing has now ended in an explosion on the water, and you now have 2 survivors in the water. Even when you are at war, a decent nation goes and rescues the survivors and then treats them as prisoners of war, even in a war situation. In this case, to make a Hollywood reference, when the bad guys are machine gunning the survivors in the water, it's not Americans in the movies. It's the bad guys. And we are on the wrong side of this if we're blowing up survivors in the water rather than trying to send rescue.
Yeah, the people have been referring today to the World War II case, Heinz Wilhelm Eck, a German U-boat commander, who got the death penalty for this at the end of World War II because he did that. He was killing survivors in the water. It's apparently the textbook, literally the textbook example of the kind of illegal order to refuse.
Yeah, and I suspect, I haven't looked into this, but I suspect that that's actually part of the training that people get in the military, and particularly once you get up the chain of command to officer level and you get more scrutiny and you're responsible for more decisions, that it wouldn't surprise me if people in that chain of command had been taught the lesson of that Nazi U-boat commander's decision and the consequences that he paid.
And we have zero evidence that anyone at the Defense Department had any idea where any of these boats were actually going, some of them more than 1,500 miles away from the United States, well over 1,000. This one was well over 1,000 miles away from the United States. And they are suggesting that these tiny boats, smallest boats ever attacked by the American military in history, that these were somehow a threat to the United States.
Yeah, and if you put it into context with the conviction of Mr. Hernandez for taking bribes from and facilitating drug traffickers, the case of that he was convicted in was responsible for more than 500 tons of cocaine coming into the United States. I don't know how many of those little boats it would take to transit 500 tons, even if they were going to the U.S. And obviously nobody's in favor of drugs going to the U.S., but we have law enforcement to protect against that. And it certainly goes from bad to worse when you're doing the modern day equivalent of machine gunning the survivors in the water.
The other kind of inside reporting we're getting is from the Justice Department and the FBI about the chaos caused by Donald Trump's FBI director. Again, like the defense secretary, the most incompetent, unqualified FBI director in history. And the people inside there are telling us the story now in press accounts in the way we are also learning about Pete Hegseth.
Yeah, it's pretty stunning stuff over at the FBI right now. I mean, while the Department of Justice is trying to prosecute Jim Comey for lying to Congress as the director of the FBI, which is a whole separate screw up on their part, here they have this guy, Patel, the FBI director, who appears to be lying to Congress about his grand jury testimony, setting aside the fact that his grand jury testimony was given under immunity because he had asserted his Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination, which requires a good faith belief that he could be prosecuted for a crime. This is our current FBI director. That's who they're talking about. And now you pile onto this all of the ridiculous jet travel and then the vindictive punishment of the guy who ran the unit that's responsible for the jet because he didn't hide well enough where the jet's tail number had registered as Kash Patel flew his girlfriend around the country in the FBI jet. It's just one crazy thing after another. Perhaps the telling story in all of that was about Patel refusing to get off the FBI jet because he'd forgotten his FBI raid jacket. And he wanted to cosplay with Kristi Noem and all the rest of them who like playing dress up in these responsible positions. So somebody had to go and scramble and try to find a medium-sized FBI jacket so that he could come off the plane looking all FBI. And then it didn't have the right patches on it. So then they had to go do a second search for patches to put on his FBI jacket. And then finally he could come down off the FBI jet and, present himself to the FBI agents who were doing real work on real cases, trying to really protect America. And when you're doing that kind of work and you see that kind of clownish behavior out of your FBI director, it's hard not to be angry and very disappointed.
Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, thank you very much for starting off our discussions tonight. Elon Musk turning on Donald Trump today comes after Donald Trump turned on the man who chooses Donald Trump's Supreme Court justices. Last week, Donald Trump posted, "I was new to Washington, and it was suggested that I use the Federalist Society as a recommending source on judges. I did so openly and freely, but then realized that they were under the thumb of a real sleazebag named Leonard Leo, a bad person who, in his own way, probably hates America and obviously has his own separate ambitions. He openly brags how he controls judges and even justices on the United States Supreme Court." Joining us now is Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island. He's a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, the Senate Finance Committee, and the Budget Committee. He's the ranking member on the subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee on Federal Courts, which held a hearing on judges today, federal judges. Senator Whitehouse, I want to begin with Elon Musk's new description of the Trump budget bill, but I am really eager to get to what appears to be an area of agreement that you might have with Donald Trump about his other new enemy, Leonard Leo. But what does it mean, do you think, in the United States Senate that Elon Musk is telling Republicans in the Senate not to vote for this?
Well, it's a huge stressor for the Republicans because they're already having trouble trying to get together. My guess is that they're hearing from Republicans in the House, hey, we had to vote for this stupid thing, but I'm in real trouble. If it passes, you've got to clean this up. They've got members who don't want sections of the bill. They're probably somewhere between 8 and 12 Republican senators who have real problems with this bill of one kind or another. And now adding to all those predicaments, they have this sort of bombshell accusation from Elon Musk. And if he chooses to back it up with his previous threats to put a bounty on the head of Republican candidates in primaries and like whoever wants to run against him, here's 20, 50, whatever $million, that could really gum up the election prospects in the Senate. So this is something that I think is going to be a pretty bitter pill for them to swallow from old Elon.
Yeah, and we've all been waiting for this moment when the Trump-Musk breakup occurs, but none of us could have predicted exactly how it would occur and what would be the at least the public area of disagreement, leaving aside the possibility that Donald Trump just plain fired him. But I'm so eager to. I'm so
it's
eager.
Kind of high school.
Go ahead, Senator. Sorry.
I said it's kind of high school, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. So Leonard Leo, Donald Trump is calling him a sleazebag. You have always used more elevated language than that on this program to say what I translated to be the same thing.
Yeah, this is, frankly, hysterical thing to see. Leonard Leo is the court fixer for basically the Koch brothers' political operation. There are a few other creepy billionaires in that affinity circle, but he has basically, this is the Supreme Court the dark money built. Leo is the fixer, and the creepy billionaires, primarily the Koch operation, but others, the ones who showed up in the billionaire gifts program for the amenable justices. By the way, Leo went on the trip with Alito, the billionaire jet and fancy fishing trip. Leo is in the painting with Harlan Crow, the sugar daddy for his pet justice, Clarence Thomas. Leo is like deep in the thick of all of this stuff. And Trump has suddenly blown up at him. And here's what it might reflect. Trump might be finally figuring out that his Supreme Court appointees weren't his Supreme Court appointees after all. They were the Koch operation Supreme Court appointees. He was told to appoint them by Leonard Leo and by his White House counsel, Don McGahn, both of whom are Federalist Society, Koch brothers, Leonard Leo operatives. So he could be pretty bloody livid now that he sees the court isn't doing everything that he wants, but it's doing everything that the fossil fuel billionaires want. It's like, I got played here. I got chumped here. And Trump does not like to be chumped. So this is a little bit like gang warfare between House of Trump and House of Koch. And the peace that was brokered with that Federalist Society so-called list that held Trump to the deal that they would get to appoint the Supreme Court justices in return for them laying off on him in the 2016 election, because they were clobbering him before that list solved the problem. This is, I mean, if you're like the FBI, you kind of have to love a gang war breaking out as long as no innocents are getting hurt. And so I feel a little bit like, yeah, you guys, you just keep fighting with each other. This is too good. And then, of course, the Wall Street Journal editorial page chimes in. This is a full-on right-wing billionaire mess up.
And what is the Wall Street Journal's role in all of this?
The Wall Street Journal has been shilling for the House of Koch, for the fossil fuel billionaire interests all along. I mean, within the last decade, they were still calling climate change a hoax. Mm-hmm. Every time you go after the judges, they gin up their editorial page to tangle. When they're in real trouble, they put somebody like Sam Alito in the Wall Street Journal editorial page to do a fake interview to try to get them out of trouble. And the person that they were getting out of trouble back then with the Alito interview was actually Leonard Leo, who we were pursuing to be interviewed by the Judiciary Committee, and Alito comes in to say that's all illegal. You can't interview this guy because that's like you're interfering in the court, omitting the fact that what we're going to interview Leo about was these gifts to Alito that Leo was involved in. I mean, it's just, you couldn't make it up. You couldn't make it up. And it couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of guys. This is the court packers. This is the billionaire sneaks who ran a covert operation against their own country to try to take over the Supreme Court. And the fact that this row is fired up amongst the different right-wing miscreants is, I mean, it's beautiful.
And Republicans in the Judiciary Committee had a hearing today, apparently outraged that federal judges would ever issue rulings against Donald Trump as president.
Yeah, these are the same Republicans who cheered and actually sought nationwide injunctions against Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. And now that nationwide injunctions are happening against Donald Trump, and lots of them because he's a massive lawbreaker, they're shocked to find that there are nationwide injunctions going on. I mean, the hypocrisy borders on comedy, but they've got a mission. They want to try to put the judges, create as much animus and threat pressure against the judges as they can. And so that's part of the hearing today. And they want to continue this sort of phony baloney narrative that Trump is the victim of judges rather than the lawbreaker that judges are blowing the whistle on, because that's their job when you're dealing with a lawbreaker.
Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, thank you very much for running your tutorial on Leonard Leo on this program for years now, so that we were all ready today, or this last week, when Donald Trump finally turned on Leonard Leo, which was the plot twist that I did not see coming.
Too beautiful.
Right. Thank you, Senator. No president in history has been more friendly to drug dealers than Donald Trump. Only Donald Trump has pardoned high-level drug dealers, including the biggest drug trafficker ever convicted in the United States, the former president of Honduras. But at the same time, Donald Trump wants to kill the lowest-ranking people in drug trafficking anywhere in the world, men on small boats who might or might not be trafficking drugs from South America. Thousands of